Welcome to the Lavesh Show. I don't care what you say, Norris is the real winner this weekend. Fair enough, Verstappen finished first, but I mean, what performance from Norris? I mean, it was a work of art. During the final few laps of the race, the man kept Leclerc behind him, even with DRS, before saying ciao and closing the gap between Max. He finished the lap 7/10 of a second behind the Dutch driver, which is not something I expected at the start of the season or at least going into this race even. Yes, last week McLaren had a wonderful showing with their win, but who would have put their money on McLaren being so close to a Red Bull this early in the season? We aren't even a third of the way into the season yet. When the race started and Max started pulling away from Norris, who finished quali in second place, I thought, here we go again. Imola is going to be, well, it's going to end with Max having a 20-second gap between second place and himself. How wrong was I? The seventh leg of the season was definitely something well worth watching, and I'm sorry if you couldn't watch it. Just go watch the race highlights and be mesmerized. I know I started today's episode very differently, but can you blame me? I think this is a race that will remain in our minds for a very long time and will continue being a talking point for everyone. It is a day when Max Verstappen had to stare into his side mirrors, and not because he was being slow or because he had a problem with his car, but because McLaren came out of nowhere and said, "Screw you, Red Bull, you need to start working harder to stay away from us." Despite what critics may say, Norris was also running on slightly older tyres than the world champion. So I think that with the newer tyres, Max would not have been able to keep the lead. Norris probably would have passed him and said bye bye. So does this mean the end of the Red Bull era? No, not yet. It's still early in the season, and I don't think that the Austrians will give up without a fight. They still have a massive point lead and one unbelievable driver. So they are most certain to have Max clinch the Drivers' Championship again. Constructors, on the other hand, is going to need a lot more work, because after this week's performance from Perez and, well, a bunch of other weeks, I don't see them scoring maximum points this week, or, well, any other week, for that matter. Both McLaren and Ferrari drivers are doing extremely well, and they are truly showing some fantastic talent. Sainz has been slacking a bit since his last win, but he is still doing much better than Perez in my opinion. That being said, one driver that is doing wonderful for his team is Yuki Tsunoda. In my 2025 drivers prediction episode, I said that Tsunoda will most likely keep his seat at VCARB, but I could see a move to the main Red Bull team if he keeps up his current performance. That would certainly spice things up in terms of where we see Sainz moving to in 2025. Seeing as though is still without a contract for next year, and I basically said that I want to see him at Red Bull, or I predict him going to Red Bull because of his performance. And since Ferrari dropped him, what a big FU that would be to Ferrari if he goes to Red Bull and still beats Hamilton and Leclerc after that. During the practice sessions, Max really struggled to get his groove on, with a few issues that saw him struggle to make it onto the top 3 times for those sessions. I had hoped that he would have had some issues through quali as well, but unfortunately he still managed to secure pole for Sunday. Then came a black and white flag for him during the main race, which meant that he went over track limits. The rules allow for the first flag to basically be considered a warning, and if you get a second, that would lead to a 5-second penalty. This would mean that Norris would finish higher than Verstappen, and if you know me, you know that I was praying for Max to go over track limits and get that penalty so that we could have a different winner this week. I did also kind of wish for a lockup at the final lap or two so Norris could get an advantage and pass Max. But yeah. Now, I know what you're thinking. Lavesh, you just love complaining about everything, especially Hamilton, Perez, and Verstappen. Well, you're wrong. I'm going to give Hamilton a compliment for finishing 6th the past 2 race weekends. This makes me think that a move to Ferrari may not be such a bad thing, and I may just end up having to take back my whole Hammy retirement stance. I still don't see him coming out first or second though. One of the big things that we noticed was a rather reduced incident rate from Magnussen, who is 2 points away from getting a 1 race ban. If you didn't know, each driver has a 12-point limit of how many penalty points they can receive over a 12-month period. Now, in Magnussen's case, he's already racked up 10 points after a few nasty incidents over the past few weeks. Some of these penalties could be debatable, while some are spot on infringement. In other news, this past week saw Albon sign a contract extension with Williams. However, the details of this extension are not exactly known. For the weekend, though, Albon did have some issues which saw him having to retire his car quite late in the race. I would have thought it would have been earlier since the issues were from much earlier in the race and saw him a lap behind everybody else. But who knows what Williams were thinking. I don't know were they wishing for a miracle or what, but yeah, that's how it went. Aside from that though, I'm overjoyed that my first prediction for next season came through. That's with Albon moving to Williams. It's been a busy weekend for me, so I'm going to keep today's episode rather short and end it right here. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for listening to the Lavesh Show.